In this lecture, we will discuss the topic of noun-pronoun agreement. A pronoun, as we know, is a substitution for a noun. The pronoun must agree in number with the noun that it replaces. If the noun a pronoun refers to is singular, then the pronoun must be singular. If the noun is plural, then the pronoun must be plural. The word that a pronoun refers back to is called the antecedent. So let's look at a couple of examples. Lola agreed to lend me her Billy Joel albums. Her points back to Lola. Not only is it singular, but it's also feminine because we know Lola is a feminine person. The gravediggers sipped coffee during their break. Gravediggers is plural. Their is also plural because it points back to gravediggers. What's not correct, and which something you hear a lot, example, the student is doing their homework. That is improper English, yet it's often used because people are trying to avoid using assuming the sex of the student. And so instead of saying the student is doing his homework or the student is doing her homework, the correct way to address that is the awkward, the student is doing his or her homework. So one way to fix that is to make the noun plural. Students are doing their homework. If a sentence starts with an indefinite pronoun, which we discussed in the last lecture, then a singular pronoun should be used to refer back to that indefinite pronoun. And as a reminder, the indefinite pronouns are listed here. One, anyone, no one, everyone, someone, the ones. Then the bodies, nobody, anybody, everybody, somebody. And then also each, either, neither, or another. So a few examples. Either of the apartments has its drawbacks. Either is singular, it's referring to a choice of apartments, but it's singular, so we use the singular possessive pronoun its. Or one of the girls lost her skateboard. We know one is singular, but it's referring to girls, so we can use the feminine singular pronoun her. Or everyone in the class must hand in his paper tomorrow. Now, we don't know if everyone in the class is masculine, so technically this is proper English, and it's the way it used to always be before the feminist movement came. Since the 1970s, with the advent of the feminist movement, we've learned that we should avoid sexism in sentences, especially with the indefinite pronouns, but also with words such as person or professions. So when working with singular nouns that could be either a male or a female, we should just not assume that we would use the male pronouns he, him, or his. So in that sentence, everyone in the class must hand in his paper tomorrow. To avoid sexism, we should write everyone in the class must hand in his or her paper tomorrow. But such usage can get quite cumbersome at times. For example, a young child is seldom willing to share his or her toys with his or her friends or his or her siblings. That's very awkward. So the easiest way to fix this problem is to switch everything to the plural, not just the pronouns. Young children are seldom willing to share their toys with their friends or their siblings. The same with our previous sentence. All students must hand in their papers tomorrow. By changing everyone to all students, we can then use the plural pronoun there, and we don't have issues anymore with gender. Also, as a side note, when writing, you should avoid using sexist terms. For example, say flight attendant instead of stewardess, postal worker instead of postman, or mail carrier instead of mailman. How far you want to go, however, is up to you, and it must make linguistic sense. I have seen many times her story, which does not make linguistic sense because history comes from the Latin historia and has nothing to do linguistically with the male pronoun his, which derives from Anglo-Saxon. But do we really want to go around saying utility access hole instead of manhole? All right, we have a couple more rules that we have to consider with regard to pronoun agreement. The first is when we have two or more singular antecedents joined by the conjunction and, then we consider those antecedents, like we would a compound subject, to become plural, and therefore we should use a plural pronoun. For example, Lola and Tony haven't submitted their homework yet. Lola and Tony are both singular antecedents, but when they're joined together with and, they become plural. So we use the pronoun they, or in the case of possessive, their. Another rule: when two or more singular antecedents are joined by or nor, then the pronoun should also be singular. The or makes each antecedent independent. So the two combined together with or is considered singular, and therefore we should use a singular pronoun. So, for example, neither Lola nor Tabitha has done her homework. We know that Lola and Tabitha are both female, so we use her. Either Mexico or Venezuela will raise its oil prices. Two countries, so we use the gender neutral its and singular. When a singular noun is joined to a plural noun by or nor, the pronoun should agree in number and gender with the nearer noun. For example, either a poor diet or long hours in the office will take their toll on the business executive. The noun closest to the pronoun or to the verb is hours, so we use the plural possessive pronoun there. But if we switch the sentence around and say either long hours in the office or a poor diet will take its toll on the business executive, because now diet is the closest to the pronoun, closest to the verb, therefore we should use the singular pronoun its. Another thing to be concerned about with pronoun agreements is collective nouns, which we also talked about before. Collective nouns can be both singular and plural. So the collective nouns are referred to by either the singular or the plural pronouns depending on the meaning. Again, we talked about the difference between the unit and the individuals. So the chorus sang "It's hard out." We're looking at the chorus as a unit, so we use the singular pronoun its. The chorus took their seats. Individuals, each person takes a seat, so we would say their. The jury reached its decision, looking at the entire jury, coming together to make a decision, so we use the singular its. Whereas if the jury's divided as individuals, then the jury had their opinions polled because there was more than one jury member and therefore more than one opinion possible. So those are examples of when we should use singular versus the plural pronouns with collective nouns. And one final note on the discussion of pronoun and pronoun agreement, just as an aside, when we have the relative pronouns who, which, and that, I want to point out that who always refers to people. Which always refers to places, animals, and things. That, on the other hand, can refer to everything. It can refer to a person, it can refer to a place, it can refer to an animal, and it can refer to things.